The police finally arrested Rosa, who was found to be the main mastermind behind the whole mess. Even though she wasn't physically at the scene, investigators believed she was the one who started it all. Essentially, if she hadn't spread that story that got everyone riled up, none of this would have gone down the way it did. As the investigation went on, it became clear that many of the things Rosa had told people were lies. She had fabricated the whole thing just to get others on her side and push Estrella out of the picture. Hey there! Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another real-life story that's both shocking and unsettling. This one comes from Digos City, Philippines, and it's all about domestic chaos, something that's sadly not so rare. It involves a young couple whose marriage is still pretty fresh, and let's just say, things aren't exactly smooth sailing. The husband is struggling to find his footing, while the wife is a bit of a spoiled, easily irritated type. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The wife's best friend, who's a lot more clever, or maybe cunning, than she lets on, decides to get involved. So what happens when this friend uses the couple's issues to her advantage? Well, stick around, because we're about to get into the full story. Before we dive into the story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to share this story with your friends. You won't want to miss what happens next. Alright, let's get into it. The story starts with a girl named Rosa, born in 1997 in Davao City. But when her second sister was born in 2001, her family moved to Digos City, Philippines. Rosa was a bubbly and cheerful person, but she could also be pretty spoiled and sensitive, especially when it came to her mom. Her dad, Teodoro, worked as a security guard at a bank, while her mom sold vegetables at the market. Eventually, due to some health issues, her mom switched to running a small catering business, mostly serving the neighbors and people in their apartment complex. Now, while Rosa was in middle school, she met a guy named Nicholas, and they hit it off. They started dating, and their relationship lasted all the way through high school. After graduation, Nicholas went off to college, like his parents wanted, and also joined the family business of selling shoes. They even opened 3 different store branches across various markets. On the other hand, Rosa didn't go to college because her family couldn't afford it. Instead, she started working to help out. She got a job at a factory that packaged costume jewelry. It was at the factory where Rosa met Estrella, a woman who was 4 years older than her. The two clicked instantly, and they became best friends. They ate lunch together, went home together, and even on days off, Rosa would often hang out at Estrella's place. Estrella lived alone in the house her parents had left her after they passed away, and her siblings had already married and moved out. After a year and a half, the jewelry factory Rosa worked at ran into licensing problems with a new regional manager, so they had to move to another city. Both Rosa and Estrella were out of work for about a month, but then in July 2018, Estrella landed a job as a saleswoman at a plaza that sold branded watches. She immediately invited Rosa to join her, and Rosa got the job too. Her family was beyond grateful for Estrella's kindness, and it brought them even closer together. Estrella started spending more time at Rosa's house, and even Rosa's neighbors got to know her. Every now and then, Rosa's parents would be invited over for dinner at Estrella's place. As time passed, Rosa's relationship with Nicholas got more serious. They even introduced their parents to each other. But to be honest, Rosa's parents weren't too crazy about Nicholas. They thought he was too young, didn't have a steady job, and still acted a bit immature at times. But Rosa was super eager to get married and kept pushing for it, so after some back and forth, her parents finally agreed. They started planning the wedding right after Nicholas graduated. Just a heads up, Nicholas had only been in college for 3 years, studying business. Kind of like getting a diploma, nothing too fancy. On May 1, 2020, at 22 years old, Rosa and Nicholas got married in a simple ceremony. Even though Rosa's parents had asked to postpone the wedding because of the pandemic, the couple was set on going ahead with it. And well, they did. After getting married, Rosa moved into her in-laws' house with her husband, Nicholas. Even though she was married, Rosa continued working at the watch plaza alongside her best friend, Estrella. But here's the thing. Rosa wasn't really committed to her job. When she was in a bad mood, she'd skip work without any notice. Meanwhile, Nicholas was busy managing his parents' shoe shop. This situation really started to upset Estrella because she was getting in trouble with her boss for Rosa's behavior. Estrella had been the one who got Rosa the job in the first place, but now Rosa was taking advantage of it. When her boss gave her a warning, Rosa would just roll her eyes and act like it didn't matter. One day, since Rosa's phone was off, Estrella went to her in-laws' house to talk to her in person. She told Rosa that their boss had given her a final warning. If she missed work one more time without telling anyone, she'd be fired. Rosa, of course, just laughed it off and said, "I don't care. I'm just doing this for fun. My in-laws are rich, anyway." That really rubbed Estrella the wrong way. She felt disrespected and unappreciated. Rosa had begged her to help her get the job, but now she was acting all entitled. Estrella tried to reason with her, but Rosa got mad and kicked Estrella out of the house. On the porch, Nicholas came out to apologize for his wife's behavior. Even his mom chimed in, saying that Nicholas would go to the plaza the next day to let Rosa's boss know she was quitting. So the next day, Nicholas did just that, but Estrella still lost her job. She was let go and spent the next 3 months unemployed. In October 2020, Estrella found a new job at Digo City's biggest nightclub, located inside a luxury hotel. She worked as a cashier and sometimes helped with deliveries. Coincidentally, Nicholas started visiting the nightclub with his friends. This led him to bump into Estrella a few times, and they started chatting more. They exchanged phone numbers, and things got a little closer. Nicholas began opening up to Estrella about how difficult his marriage had become. Apparently, Rosa was too spoiled and hadn't quite grasped the idea of responsibility. She didn't like that Nicholas was still living and working with his parents. They would often fight because she spent all her time lying around the house, watching TV, sleeping, and eating. Once a week, she would ask him for money to go shopping and complain about not having their own house. Even though Nicholas had offered to rent a place for them, Rosa wouldn't settle for anything less than a big house they could call their own. She even pressured him to ask his parents for an inheritance so they could buy a new house. Rosa was embarrassed to rent, thinking that since her husband was a businessman, they should be able to afford more. This angered Nicholas, and he scolded her for being lazy and spoiled. After another argument with both her mother-in-law and Nicholas, Rosa ran off to her parents' apartment, hoping her husband would come to pick her up and apologize. But instead of going to her, Nicholas went to the nightclub to meet Estrella. The two of them started a secret relationship that no one knew about at the time. As days went by, Rosa became more and more restless. Her parents even told her she was the one throwing a tantrum. She had her sister follow Nicholas around to see what he was up to. When she found out that Nicholas had been meeting Estrella at the nightclub and even taking her to work, Rosa lost it. She stormed over to Estrella's house in the middle of the night, demanding answers. Despite feeling guilty, Estrella stood her ground and kicked Rosa and her sister out of her house. The next day, when Rosa went back to her husband's house and tried to tell her mother-in-law about Nicholas' actions, they completely ignored her. In fact, her husband told her that he wanted a separation because he was fed up with her behavior. But Rosa refused to let go and went back to her parents' apartment, feeling completely defeated. She vented her frustrations to her family and the neighbors, claiming that her in-laws had been abusive the whole time. This, of course, made her friend Belen furious. Belen, who was 24, was so upset that at midnight on June 28, 2021, she went to Nicholas' parents' closed shoe shop at the market. In a fit of rage, she broke the glass and damaged the iron door. The next day, Belen was arrested after Nicholas' mom reported her to the police, and her face was caught on CCTV. This whole situation only fueled the anger of the flat residents and other neighbors, especially when Rosa told them that her best friend, Estrella, had betrayed her. She claimed that Estrella was the reason she got fired in the first place and shared other stories that made everyone even angrier. At 2 a.m. on June 30, 2021, about 16 people, including Rosa's sister, showed up at Estrella's house. Rosa didn't go with them, but her sister and the others did. They jumped out of their car and threw Molotov cocktails at Estrella's porch while shouting. They even broke into the house through a window and started fires on both the first and second floors. They knew Estrella was downstairs and locked all the doors from the outside. It wasn't until about an hour later that the police and fire department showed up, after a neighbor called them. By then, the group had already fled, and the fire was finally put out 3 hours later. Luckily, Estrella survived and was rushed to Diggo's City General Hospital. Estrella had suffered some injuries from the fire, but fortunately, they weren't too severe. She spent about 3 weeks recovering. The authorities quickly got to work, gathering CCTV footage from the complex and a neighboring house's terrace. Initially, 14 people were implicated, and arrests were made. The testimonies from the neighbors helped speed up the investigation, and though the group tried to protect each other at first, fear of heavy punishment led them to start talking. Eventually, the police arrested Rosa, the mastermind behind the attack, even though she wasn't at the scene. It turns out she had been the one who stirred up the anger of the residents with her false claims. If she hadn't spread those stories, none of this would have happened. And as the investigation continued, it became clear that many of Rosa's claims were lies. She had manipulated the situation to get people on her side and turn them against Estrella. To make things worse, just 2 weeks later, Rosa's mother-in-law filed a defamation report against her. She stated that she had never abused Rosa, despite Rosa's claims. At the trial on October 23, 2021, Belen, the friend who had vandalized the shop, admitted that she was just angry because she was tired of Rosa's lies. Belen was sentenced to 2 months in prison. In the end, only 9 people were convicted for setting Estrella's house on fire. They received sentences ranging from 6 months to a year, including Rosa's sister, who got a 1-year sentence. Rosa herself was found guilty of causing the disturbance, attempting to harm Estrella, defamation, and spreading false information. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison and fined about $10,000. After everything went down, Nicholas filed for divorce from Rosa in December 2021. As for Estrella, her brother took her to Thailand for further treatment. There's no solid information about whether Nicholas and Estrella continued their relationship, but it seems unlikely. To protect their family's reputation, Nicholas was actually told by his parents to move to Vietnam. This way, if Rosa ever got out of prison, they would have no reason to contact each other again. What lessons can we learn from this story?